Thanks, Jerry, and thanks to all of you for coming. God bless you all. I'm just going to start. I'm not a hero. I just spent 4 years in the Air Force. During the Vietnam era, I was not in Vietnam. I was, my rank when I left the service was sergeant. I was an aircraft mechanic on B-52s and KC-135 and RC-135 aircraft. I joined the service in 1974, and I was discharged in 1978. But I'm not here to speak about myself. I'm here to speak about my dad and his time in the service, and this is an honor for him. And what I'm going to read here is an interview that was done with my father by a college student, a colleague of my sister's. And it really touched me. I have a copy of it. I don't have the whole interview. The tape was destroyed. It was a lot longer than this. But anyway, the young man called it Healing of a Hero, Memories of World War II. And in it, his introduction, he says, I was fortunate enough to interview Mr. Thomas Vause several hours. His war experience both thrilled and gave me tremendous insight into a time I have only had the opportunity to read about. And just a little caveat here, this is when kids were taught about our history and about World War II, which are not being taught anymore, and it's a sin. So he says he's going to talk a little bit about this war hero. His soft, comforting Southern accent is incapable of masking the sheer violence and horror he has witnessed in the few short hours we had spent together. Mr. Vause did more to change my perception of valor, inner strength, and the country than my life has thus far. I truly felt honored to be granted the chance to sit across from a hero. So here's where he starts his interview. Where are you stationed? Fort Benning, Georgia, says my dad. Did you go overseas? Yes. Where overseas did you go? Well, I went to North Africa, Sicily, Italy, southern France, and Germany. What year did you go in? I went into the service in 1940. Till when? 1945. Then my dad says, I'll tell you the truth, when I went in and tried to pick up a little French Moroccan, when I hit Sicily, I had to forget about my little bit of French, and I tried to pick up some Italian. So I went through Italy and I hit southern France, had to forget about my Italian and tried to pick up a little French. Got out of France and was on my way to Germany, had to forget about my little bit of French, and I tried to pick up German. So it turns out I never learned anything. Just enough to get through, though. Yeah. How did you go in? Did you enlist, or were you drafted? Enlisted. What were you doing before you went in the war? I was a farmer. Just a little different. Oh, yeah. What was your rank? I never got beyond PFC. Did you get any other medals besides your Silver Star? I got a bronze. What'd you get the bronze for? Gallantry in action. Well, that was both of them. If I had them here, I'd show them to you. But I moved to Carolina. Actually, that's where I was born, South Carolina, where my father's from. Let me get back to where I was. So I'd show them, but they're in Carolina. My wife and I are down there now. I got my discharge and all my medals down there. How'd you get your Silver Star? That was gallantry in action. We were sweeping mines in front of tanks. We were going into a little town and we were sweeping mines. We discovered the old box mines. We tried to pull them out with ropes, but that didn't work, so we dug them out by hand while advancing. Really? Yeah, we captured the little town and took, I believe, 35 prisoners under a great line of fire. I tell you, I was lucky to get out alive. Well, I've been in some tight situations several times. Have you? Oh man, rough. It was rough for a while. Well, after all, I served 5 years, but 3 years I served in the actual war. Were you ever afraid? Oh yeah, I was afraid several times. But that don't help people much. Actually, I got put out with the VA. We was digging those mines, and I got too close to the tank behind me. It was firing a recall, and I was knocked down. I've never been able to hear much out of my left ear since. I asked them about giving me a hearing aid, and they said I had to pay for it, so I told them to keep it. I didn't need it. What made you enlist in the Army? Well, I was ready for the draft. I figured I'd just go ahead before they called me, and I could get a preference of where I wanted to go if I volunteered. Did you ever feel at any point we wouldn't win? No, not actually. No, I sure didn't. I felt if we could get through it, we would win it. I was with General Patton. And you know, he got plenty of rough name during the war. We always called him blood and guts, his guts and our blood. How was the morale of the men you were with? Well, I'll tell you the truth. Toward the end, we were getting a lot of new recruits. We lost so many men. Well, naturally, they were young and were just brought in. They were a little frightened. They were really upset, some of them were. Some of them almost went crazy under the fire. Coming over and hitting the front line right away is rough. Would you say you got used to the fighting? No. I figured I'm here, I'll make the best of it to get through this thing. I was like a good many others, lucky to get through it and make it out alive. How old were you when you enlisted? 21. I went in on July 1st. I was 21 on the 30th of April. In fact, it was only July 4th, 1940. I came out in July of 45. I was in several different outfits. I went over with the 2nd Armored Division. I ended up in a trucking outfit hauling ammunition to the front. They started cutting the service companies 10%, so I'd be cut off and sent to another outfit, and another outfit. I wound up in the 36th Infantry Division during the last of the war. I was field artillery and smoke generator outfit. Oh Lord, I don't know, a trucking outfit. You saw a lot. Tell me about sweeping the mines. I really don't know what that means. We had minesweepers, and we always carried our M1 rifles with us too. Have you ever seen a minesweeper? No. It's a disc with a long handle, and you sweep along in front of you, and it detects metal. Oh yes, I know what you mean now. That's how this happened to me, refers to his ear. Did you ever lose anyone by digging out the mines? Oh, we lost several men. In fact, I had a very good friend who was a neighbor of mine who had mortar squad. And Lord have mercy, we was going in to take this little town with tanks. I don't remember how many men I lost in my squad. He lost about 7 or 8. I remember walking past him with his brains blown out. And then he becomes quiet and distant. Where was this town? I can't think of the name of it. Who gave you the Silver Star? It was sent to Major General, and he brought it to me at my home in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. When you came home after the war, how was America different from when you left? It wasn't too much different from me because I lived on a farm and everybody knew me and I knew them. How were you different? I mean, after seeing everything. The fact is, I used to have nightmares every once in a while, and every once in a while he had nightmares till he died. I used to scare my wife by waking up upset. You know, I met my wife in Sicily. Did you meet her while you were over there? Yeah. Did you bring her back with you? No, I was discharged and we kept corresponding. I finally sent for her, I met her in New York. We went back to Carolina and we were married. Lord, if I live to see this October 16th, we'll be married 50 years. This was in 1974, I guess, 77. That's great. What do you think was your best moment while you were over there? We got a break and came up to North Africa. I think during the break was my best time. We had some time to relax before we hit Sicily. You know, the invasion of Sicily, actually the Germans were always flying over and dropping their bombs here and there, but that was the most peaceful time up there in North Africa. Now, I want to make a caveat here. That's where he first landed. So I guess he didn't have another peaceful time after North Africa. Do you ever get used to hearing the bombs? Or did you ever get used to hearing the bombs? No, I'll tell you, I was really getting upset and sometimes afraid too. I was telling you about the time when I was hauling ammunition to the front. I remember run time. Oh boy, they were coming in at that time. We didn't have planes to take care of the German Stukas. You know what a German Stuka is? That's a dive bomber. That they used to bomb the troops on Kasserine Pass while they were hauling ammo. The only thing we'd see was a British Spitfire every once in a while. I remember we were in a convoy going to the front loaded with ammunition. A Stuka came over and knocked 2 of our trucks out in front. Naturally, I had a 50 caliber machine gun on top of the truck. I had an assistant driver. I'll never forget his name. It was Rodriguez. He was a Mexican. He got that machine gun going. He must have hit one because I saw smoke coming out of one of them. They were dropping the bombs. That must have been one of my scariest moments. Did you know anything about the bombing of Hiroshima, or did you find out afterwards? No, afterwards. They were sending me over to Japan, and I almost was sent over. Thank God the general said, no, that man has been here long enough, he's going home. He was talking about me, so I got out of that. 5 years was enough time. I think 5 months would have been enough time. What do you feel your medals represent? Well, I'll tell you, I'm proud of them, but I wish they would have set me up to live a little bit. Like here, my hearing, do you know, they told me I had to have eyewitnesses. I said, hell, half of them are dead, and I don't know where the other half are. Can you believe they asked me for eyewitnesses? I had my citation letter with me and said, this is the date, why do I need eyewitnesses? That was the end of that. Do you remember the date? No, it was in the spring. Do you think of yourself as a hero? Not really, because I tell you, there was so much going on. All of them were heroes to me. I'm just glad I got through. Man, I had many good buddies. Oh man, all of them were heroes as far as that goes. Were all the men in your platoon close? Oh yes, we were all close. We took care of each other, sure did. Do you think that's what got us through the war? Oh yes, the fighting men, not the generals. The men, the soldiers. That's who the heroes were, all of them. Whenever you lost someone in your platoon, he was asking, and then he's cut off by my dad. Oh man, that made me feel terrible. I can remember one time I had a very close friend. We were attacking, going up a mountain. The Germans were dropping their mortar shells on us. They were coming down like pepper all around us. It happened on Mother's Day. I never will forget. I heard my friend yelling. He was bleeding, wasn't dead, but he died. He said, tell my mother, give my mother a happy Mother's Day. God, that hurt me so bad. And then he grew distant. Were you homesick? I always prayed I'd get home safe. Were your parents alive while you were over there? My mother, yes. Did you keep in contact with her? Yes, sometimes the Red Cross would get in contact with her because I'd be somewhere and I couldn't write. When you were over there, did you have any knowledge of the concentration camps? Oh man, I helped liberate too. Did you? I tell you, it was the most awful thing that could have happened. Skeletons, boxcars full of them, murdered in the boxcars, murdered, machine gunned to death. Those who were out looked like skeletons walking around. You remember the names of the one you helped liberate? Oh, I can't remember. There were so many of those doggone things. The gas chambers, those things, Lord have mercy. One was well known, but I can't remember. I name a few camps, but I can see Mr. Vause does not want to elaborate on the subject of the death camps. After a little while, Mr. Vause begins to tell me more of the story. I remember one of those camps, they got hold of one SS officer. I watched this with my own eyes. They rowed him out in a lake and drowned him. They beat him in the head with oars. There was nothing I could do about it. Lord have mercy, I reckon in a way he deserved it. The German SS officers were something else. They could drop a shell in your hip pocket. They were so accurate. Did seeing the situations within the camps drive you to fight harder? Oh man, they were being starved to death and murdered. Oh my Lord, have mercy. We wanted to get rid of those Germans and real fast. Were the prisoners relieved to see you? They were so happy, so glad. I thought to myself, how could these people even stand? They were nothing but skin and bone. Skin and bone. They did all kinds of things to them. Unimaginable. Unimaginable. How do you think serving in the war, seeing the fighting, your friend dying, and the concentration camps, I'm cut off again. And I don't understand why in the world the heads of countries have to be like this and get into wars. We've been fighting for years and years, and I don't think it will ever end. We're all human beings, so why can't we compromise and try to live together? I have no faith in the country anymore. The government is rotten to the bone. We have nothing. Everyone is looking out for their own pocketbook. If you had the opportunity to go and fight for the country the way it is today, would you go? If I could get out of it, I think I would. Did the men in your platoon have a common motto? Oh yeah, we did have one. You take care of my back and I'll take care of yours. We did our best with one another. Did you know people could be as cruel towards one another as you encountered over there? I don't see how in the world a man in his right mind and with a heart could treat people that way. What did you think of Hitler? He should have never been born. How people could follow a man like that, I'll never know. When you liberated the concentration camps, did you know what type of place you were going to encounter? We were surprised because they didn't tell us exactly what we were going into. Once we started to get the people out, your heart would break, you'd see so much. Were there mostly men alive? Yes. In fact, I don't believe I even saw any women. The only thing I can't get out of my mind are those boxcars loaded with the bodies, man. Were the Germans at the camps once you got there? Naturally, they were all gone. When you came home, did you keep in contact with any of the men you were over there with? No. We were so far apart, I remember another thing that happened that got me my Silver Star. I remember the bullets were flying. I could smell them. They were so close. I got up and went over to the tank, took the butt of my rifle, banged on it. The guy opens the top of the tank, and I told him that I knew where the pillbox was. Pillbox. Pillbox was a hole in the wall where they would stick their guns out so they could fire. Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. I said, hey, see that tree over there? Showed him the pillbox, and he fired a shell right in there. Lord have mercy, those Germans came out of there with their hands up. I was so happy. Me and my buddy joined the rifle squad, marched the prisoners into that little town. Did you ever regret fighting the war? Not really. Every time we came out of battle, I thought, thank God I came out of that one. Here's the conclusion of that interview. Mr. Vause resides, well, he doesn't anymore, he's resting in South Carolina. His final resting place in our family cemetery outside of Timminsville. Mr. Vause resides in South Carolina with his wife, Lena. He's the father of 5 children, 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. He spends his time devoted to the care of Lena, who was a victim of a stroke a few years ago. Since his war days, he has moved between New York and South Carolina numerous times. I entitled my paper, Healing of a Hero. After my interview, I received a call from his daughter, telling me her father had never seemed so calm. She told me that I now knew more about her father than she did. Yep. And that's the same for me. I feel that a great weight has been lifted from Mr. Vause having the opportunity to speak freely of the war. I wish our time together could have been longer. For a chance to speak to such a valiant person comes very rare. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And if you want to see the second arm of the picture, there's a picture of him hanging right in front of the bar there. My father's in that picture too, but you can't see him because there's 12,000 men.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
On behalf of the committee, we'd like to give you that.
Thank you.
Thanks for our speech today.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Paul. At this time, I'm going to ask Joyce to come up. She's the head of the committee, and she can